Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk English. I'm James.
And I'm Emma. We're here to help you improve your English.
Let's get started.
Ever feel like you're just kind of glued to your phone, scrolling, when you know you should probably be like calling a friend or something?
Yeah.
It's like we're all wired to put everything, like literally everything, ahead of nurturing those connections.
Right.
But what if I told you those very connections, the ones we're all kind of avoiding, those are actually the key to not just like a happier life, but a healthier one too?
I mean, yeah.
That's what we're diving into today.
Yeah, it's all right there in pasted text.
Yeah.
Get ready for some serious aha moments, because I definitely had a few.
For sure. So we all know, like, relationships, they're important.
Of course, yeah.
But the why behind it,
Yeah.
that's where things get kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually.
This source we're looking at breaks it down into three main benefits. Like, first up, you've got emotional support, obviously, right?
Sure, yeah.
But then there's that sense of belonging, which I think is something we all crave on some level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, get this, there are actual physical health benefits to having strong relationships.
Yeah, and honestly, those are the benefits I found most fascinating. This source really highlights the science behind why relationships are so crucial. And it goes way beyond just, feeling good, although that's definitely a nice perk.
Totally.
But it's really about how deeply intertwined our social lives are with our emotional and even like physical well-being.
So we're not just talking about like having someone to vent to or whatever, though that's great too.
Right.
We're talking about our bodies literally functioning better when we're connected.
Exactly. And I think those health benefits are where things get really interesting. Like, imagine you're prepping for this huge presentation at work. You're stressed.
The worst.
Instead of letting your stress hormones go haywire, you decide to reach out to, I don't know, maybe a colleague, just for like a quick pep talk.
Right, right.
Well, it turns out that simple act of connection, that can actually lower your blood pressure.
No way.
And it can even reduce your risk of heart disease.
Seriously?
It's like our bodies are literally hardwired to thrive in a supportive community.
Wow. That's crazy. Okay, so it's not just about like venting or feeling less alone. Those are definitely benefits.
Of course, yeah.
Our bodies actually like function better when we feel connected.
They do. It's why it makes sense when you really think about it, though. I mean, we humans, we're social creatures, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of our thing. And that feeling of belonging that this pasted text keeps bringing up, that's not just about like having someone to grab coffee with on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right. Right. It's deeper than that.
It's about feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling understood. And let's be real, that's a basic human need.
Totally.
And when that need is met, it impacts us like literally on a physiological level. Our biology is giving us a thumbs up for having a solid crew.
That's a great way to put it. And it's something we often forget, I think, in our like go, go, go world.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in the hustle, we forget how important those connections are, not just for our sanity, but for our actual health. So then the source starts breaking down different types of relationships, and that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets good, because it's true. Not all relationships are created equal, are they?
For sure not.
I mean, we've got family relationships, friend relationships, romantic partners, work connections, the list goes on. And they all have their own like unique little quirks and demands.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to manage those different categories, that's key, especially for someone like our listener, who's probably juggling a ton of different things in their life.
You're telling me.
Right.
Right. Like, especially for our listener, I'm thinking two categories really come to mind. You've got your family relationships and then your professional ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And those are both such biggies in their own right.
Huge.
And they often need totally different approaches.
Yeah.
Which I think the source does a good job of outlining. Like family, that can be complicated.
Oh, tell me about it.
We've got our history, we got our baggage, and sometimes those expectations we picked up as kids, those can stick around long after we've like moved out and stuff.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like, how do you even begin to nurture those bonds and still like set healthy boundaries at the same time, especially when there's already so much going on?
It's a balancing act, that's for sure. The source really emphasizes how like family dynamics, they're often so deeply ingrained.
Makes sense.
They're shaped by years of shared experiences, whether we realize it or not.
Better or worse, right.
Totally. And like those relationships, they can be so rewarding, obviously, but they also need everyone to be on the same page about communication and stuff. And everyone's always evolving. So it's like you always have to be adapting to each other.
It's like learning a whole new language sometimes.
Yeah, it really is.
So we've got family, which is a whole thing. But then there's the whole work-life balance equation, too.
Oh, right.
And this is where those professional relationships, like the source talks about, become super relevant, especially, again, for someone like our listener who's, I'm guessing, very career-driven.
Totally. I mean, the source makes it crystal clear. Like, the quality of those connections we have at work, those directly impact not just how productive we are, but also, like, how much we actually enjoy our jobs. And let's be real, we spend a ridiculous amount of time at work, so those relationships, they really do matter.
For sure. I mean, who wants to be miserable 8 hours a day, right?
Right.
But how does the source suggest we actually cultivate those positive relationships? Because let's be real, workplaces can be tough. It can feel like everyone's out for themselves sometimes.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And that's where this idea of authenticity comes in. Like the source emphasizes that it's not about being fake or playing games. It's not about sucking up to the boss or whatever.
Right.
It's about actually being genuine, showing up as yourself and taking a real interest in the people you work with.
So it's about more than just networking.
Way more. This is about real connection. It's about realizing the people you work with, they're humans too. They've got lives outside of work.
This is about building a work family, not just a network.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got family relationships. Those are important. We've got professional connections, also super key. And they both have their own unique challenges.
Right, yeah.
But this source, it doesn't just leave us hanging, right?
Thankfully not.
It actually goes into some of the biggest roadblocks we face when we're trying to nurture any kind of meaningful connection these days.
Yeah, and some of these are so common, we don't even realize how much they're affecting us.
Seriously.
And I think the source does a great job of highlighting those.
Totally. And the two that really jumped out at me were time constraints and then that whole digital overload thing.
Ugh, yeah. Those are the worst.
The worst. Time constraints especially. It's like there's never enough time in the day to do it all.
Never.
But what I thought was interesting was how the source talked about how that constant time crunch, that can really lead to some serious feelings of guilt.
Oh, absolutely. And that guilt can be paralyzing.
It really can.
Because you feel like you're failing the people you care about. Because you're not always as available or as present as you maybe should be. And it's like this constant low-grade anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not there enough. And for someone like our listener, who's likely killing it in so many areas of their life.
They're already doing so much.
Exactly. That kind of guilt, that could be incredibly draining.
It's like that feeling you get when you're scrolling through Instagram instead of calling your mom back, you know?
Yes.
You should be doing something else.
Right.
But you're stuck. You're in the scroll hole.
It gets you every time.
And that's actually the perfect segue to that second obstacle, digital overload.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, I love my phone, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it feels like it's taking over my entire life.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope for sure.
Totally. And the source makes this really good point about how our devices, like our phones, they're amazing, don't get me wrong, but they can also make us feel like we're more connected than we actually are.
Yeah.
It's like this illusion of connection.
Right, because we're constantly bombarded with updates and notifications in everyone's highlight reel.
Exactly, and it's all surface level stuff.
Exactly. It's so easy to end up with hundreds of online friends, but then feel totally empty and alone when you finally log off.
The worst.
And for someone like our listener who really values those deeper, more authentic connections, that kind of disconnect can be really jarring.
It's like we're choosing quantity over quality without even realizing it.
Yeah, and this source really drives that point home, which I appreciate.
Totally. But here's the good news. The source doesn't just dump all these problems on us and then peace out.
No, thankfully not.
It actually gives us tools to deal with this stuff, which is what I love.
Exactly. It gives us a toolkit, which I think is super helpful.
Yes. So let's dive into some of those actionable strategies. The source talks about a bunch, but the three that really stuck with me were first, prioritization.
Okay, yeah.
Then there's setting boundaries, which is always a tough one.
Always.
And then, of course, embracing quality over quantity, which kind of brings us full circle.
Right, because I think they all work together too, which is cool. Take prioritization, for example. It's not about ranking your loved ones or anything.
No, definitely not.
You're number one, you're number two. It's not like that. It's more about recognizing that different relationships just naturally require different levels of engagement from us. And that's okay.
Totally. Like, you might talk to your best friend every single day, but you only see, like, your extended family a few times a year. And that's totally normal.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about what works for each connection, which actually I think leads perfectly into that next strategy, setting boundaries.
Yes, because to actually make space for those relationships we're prioritizing, we have to get comfortable with saying no to other things, whether it's those never-ending work emails or, like you said, those tempting social media notifications.
Ugh, yes, so important. And this is where things can get kind of tricky, especially for someone like our listener who, let's be honest, is probably like super driven. Yeah. It's really easy to fall into that trap of thinking you always have to be available.
Oh, 100%. It's like this constant pressure.
Right. But what the source does, which I appreciate, is it reminds us that setting boundaries isn't selfish.
It's not.
Like, it's actually essential. It's essential for our own well-being and for the health of our relationship.
It's about protecting your time and energy so you can actually show up for the people who matter most.
Exactly. And that, I think, goes hand in hand with that final strategy of quality over quantity. Because let's be real, we live in a world that's constantly telling us that if our social calendar isn't, like, overflowing, we're doing something wrong.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like, the busier the better, which is so messed up.
It's so backwards. But, like this source, it reminds us that it's not about how many connections we have. It's about the depth of those connections. You know, it's about quality over quantity, always.
Preach. It's about, like you said, finding those relationships that actually nourish you, the ones that challenge you, that make you feel seen.
Yes, 100%. Okay, but before we wrap things up, can we talk about self-care for a second?
Oh, yes. It's so important. I'm so glad you brought it up because I feel like it often gets overlooked.
Yes. Like, I think people sometimes roll their eyes at self-care. Like, it's this fluffy thing.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not. It's crucial. And the source actually makes a really compelling argument for why taking care of ourselves is, like, one of the best things we can do for our relationships.
I love that because it's true. It's not selfish. It's essential.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we can't pour from an empty cup. Like, when we neglect our own needs, we're left feeling drained and depleted, and that's not good for anyone. It's not good for us, and it's definitely not good for the people we care about.
So true. Taking care of ourselves, it's an act of generosity, not selfishness. By taking care of our own needs, we're actually better equipped to show up for the people we care about.
Totally.
It's like that whole oxygen mask thing on an airplane. You have to put your own mask on first before you can help anyone else.
It's a classic example for a reason.
Right. And the best part is self-care. It doesn't have to be complicated.
No, not at all.
The source makes it clear. It can be as simple as, like, 5 minutes of meditation in the morning or a quick walk in nature. Or even just mustering up the courage to say no to something you really don't have the energy for.
Seriously. Little things make a huge difference.
It's about being intentional with your time and energy, making sure you're doing things that actually feed your mind, body, and spirit.
100%.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's safe to say that finding that harmony in our social connections, it's not like a one and done kind of thing.
No, it's a journey, for sure.
It's a constant balancing act.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone, too. But it's about being mindful of your own needs, setting those healthy boundaries we talked about, and really, like, cherishing and nurturing the relationships that matter most.
Perfectly said. I think the big takeaway here is that it's all about quality over quantity, showing up authentically, and remembering that sometimes the most meaningful moments, they happen in those quiet in-between spaces. A shade smile, really listening when someone's talking to you, a heartfelt conversation.
Those are the moments we remember.
They are. To leave you with a final thought, the source talked about how different relationships need different things, which I thought was interesting.
It is.
So my question for you listening is this. What's one relationship in your life that maybe needs a little extra love right now? What does that relationship need more of? Is it quality time? Is it more open and honest communication? Or maybe it's just a quick text to let that person know you're thinking about them.
Sometimes those little gestures, those are the things that mean the most. It all comes down to showing up, consistently, even in small ways. Let the people you care about know that they're loved, they're valued, and they matter to you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
For more awesome content, like, comment, and subscribe.